Could you let go of wanting to be separate? And more. And more. And more. And even more. And more. And even more. And more. Could you let go of resisting? Whatever it is you're resisting, it's your resistance. And what you're resisting, you're pulling right at you. So could you let go of resisting? Maybe you're resisting your feelings. Maybe too many of them are getting stirred up. And you don't like it. And it's making you uncomfortable. So bring it up. Bring up the resistance. Let go of holding on. They all want to leave. Let them leave. And more. And more. And more. And more. And see how you feel about witnessing. See if it threw you into wanting to figure it out. What's he talking about? All right, so we ask your mind if it knows about witnessing. It doesn't know. It's the last thing it wants to do is witness. It always wants to speak up and talk and make noise. Well, whose mind is it? Whose mouth is it? That's yours? So could you just let it go? It does want to leave, just let it go. Add more. Add more. Add more. Add more. And even more. And see if you want to separate yourself from the noise that's being made outside. And more. And more. Could you allow yourself to be the noise? Allow yourself to be the noise. Just be it. Surrender to the noise. And more. And more. And more. Could you let go of being separate from all those bodies, all the bodies walking around in a room? When you're witnessing, when you walk in the room, in the dining room, watch the judgments you have. This one's fat, this one's short, this one's tall. Watch the judgments and just let go of wanting to be separate. Allow yourself to be one. See yourself as them. If you were them, you wouldn't need to separate yourself from them. But there'd be nothing to separate yourself from. And if you were one with everybody in the universe, there wouldn't be any problems. What would they be afraid of? You can even be one with Mother Nature. See if you're trying to separate yourself from Mother Nature. The hurricanes, the earthquakes. See if that stirs up a wanting to be separate or a fear of dying. Could you let that go? It doesn't help you. You're holding it in mind if you do. See if you're resisting earthquakes, tsunamis, mother-in-laws. Could you let go of resisting? And more. And more. And more. See if you've been stirring up your fears by watching all these reports in the newspaper and television about all the devastation. See if that stirs up a wanting to be separate inside you. Could you let go of wanting to be separate? And more. If you didn't see it, if you weren't seeing it and you weren't noticing it, you wouldn't have to be separate from it. It wouldn't be existing. Instead, you insist on looking at it, giving into your fears, and therefore you're making it real. So could you let go and want to separate yourself from it? And more. And see if it's stirring up a fear of dying, a fear of being hurt, not wanting it to happen to you, resisting it, trying to run away from it. Could you just let go? And more. And more. And more. See if you're disapproving of a hurricane. See if you're disapproving of a hurricane. How does it help you? And who's doing it? You are. So you're agitating Mother Nature by disapproving of it. And therefore she's giving you what you will want. Could you let go of disapproving of a hurricane? And more. And more. And more. And could you give the hurricane some approval? You send it positive energy, you're safe. You send it negative energy, you're causing trouble for yourself. You're causing anybody sending it negative energy, you're causing trouble for yourself. So could you give the hurricane some approval? Positive never hurt anything. Could you give it some more approval? Could you give it some more approval? Could you give it some more approval? Could you give it even more approval? And could you give it even more approval? And more. See if you're resisting an earthquake. Could you let go of resisting an earthquake? And more. And more. And see if you're disapproving of earthquakes. You're pulling it right at you. You're resisting it. Could you let go of resisting it? And more. And more. And more. And could you give it some approval? Positive never hurt anything. Could you give it some approval? By giving it approval, it'll allow you to be safe. You won't be in opposition to Mother Nature. You'll be in harmony instead of out of harmony. So could you give it some approval? And more. If you're in fear of it, you're out of harmony. Fear it, appear it. So could you let go of being afraid of it? And more. And more. And more. And more. And even more. Let's see how you feel about it now. Are you? Are you? Are you? Are you? Are you? And see if you're resisting holding on. See if you have a fear about letting go. Letting go of whatever. Could you just decide to let go? And more. And more. See if you're resisting suffering. If you're resisting suffering, you're pulling it at you, you're holding it in mind. Could you let go of resisting suffering? And more. And more. And more. And more. See if you're disapproving of suffering. Doesn't help you to do that, you're adding to it. Could you let go of disapproving of suffering? And more. And more. And more. And more. And see if you're disapproving of dying. If you want to get rid of your desires, you got to be willing to die. And you'll discover that you don't die. Your only thing that dies is your ego. So see if that brings up a fear. And examine who's afraid. Who's afraid? That's your ego. Beingness is not afraid. It's your ego. So could you let go of the fear of dying that you have? You're pulling it at you if you do. Could you let go of that fear of dying? And more? And more? And more? And even more? And more? And more? See if you have a fear of losing your body. You're holding on for dear life. Could you let go of the fear of holding on? That body, can you let that fear go of losing it? Could you let go of protecting yourself with fear? And more? And more? And more? And more? And more? And even more? And more? And more? Okay, when you're ready, allow your eyes to